Hi, everybody. Welcome to this MySQL session, import data to MySQL Database Service, MySQL HeatWave Database Service, from a MySQL based on-prem, based on cloud, or even the MySQL data on OCI object storage. My name is Olivier Dazini. Okay, so what we want to achieve today is to import data into a MySQL Database Service and or MySQL HeatWave. And we're gonna learn how to export the data from a MySQL instance, store this data into an OCI object storage bucket, and import this data from a bucket to MySQL Database Service. So to keep this presentation short, I assume that all the tools needed are already installed. So we'll need to use MySQL Shell. The MySQL Shell is a text client from MySQL. So MySQL Shell is already installed on my machine. We are gonna need a configuration file, an OCI CLI configuration file. So this file already exists and is properly set up. We will need to obviously to have all the privileges necessary to create object storage, to store this data, and to create a new MySQL database instance. Okay, so what is the workflow? The workflow is quite simple, actually. First, we have a MySQL with or running with data. We are going to dump this data using MySQL Shell. This data will be stored in OCI object storage bucket on OCI network, and we are going to use the MySQL data import feature from the OCI panel to create a new database instance already populated with this data. Okay, so the plan is very simple. First step, dump the data, create the MySQL database instance, add, and that's it. If you have a MySQL HeatWave, we need to add the HeatWave cluster and then to load the data into the HeatWave cluster. Okay, let's start. So to dump the data, again, I'm going to use MySQL Shell. MySQL Shell have 3 functions that we can use to dump the data: dump instance, dump schema, and dump table. So let's see all this thing in live. So I'm already connected to the MySQL host. What I want is to connect using MySQL Shell in localhost, and I want to connect in SQL mode. Okay, let's see what do we have. Here we have 7 schemas, 7 databases, and I want to create this MySQL HeatWave database instance populated with this schema and this one. So first step, I'm going to switch to JavaScript mode, and like I said, we have in the util different databases, different schemas, different functions, and dump instance, dump schemas, and dump table. What I want in this, what I'm going to do in this demo is to, like I said, dump this TPCH and employee schema. So I'm gonna use this dump schemas function. Up, dump schemas, TPCH and employees, and I need to pass some option, obviously. So the bucket name. So this data will be stored inside this bucket. Some other information, OCI MDS must be true because it is this data will be loaded into a MySQL Database Service instance, and some other information. These information options are dependent of your context, obviously. Compatibility mode is quite important usually. I want to be sure all the tables are in ODB mode. some information will be stripped. And if I don't have a primary keys for all my tables, the tools will add them. This is very important in order to use MySQL HA or MySQL HeatWave. Okay, so before running this command, let's see if the bucket is created. Okay, is created and there is no data. Perfect. Let's dump the data. So this can this work because I have a file, config file already set up. So this config file is mandatory to be in order to MySQL shell to be able to connect to the instance, to OCI. Okay, so I had 14 table to schematize. It was quite quick and encompass data, 1 gigabyte, so not so much. Okay, so first step is done. Let's refresh this page. Let's see if it worked. Okay, 148 object. And okay, so the dump is done and is stored in MySQL data object storage. Fine. Moving on. Now I want to create the MySQL database instance. So I'm going to home, database, and DB systems. Okay, so here I have many choices. I will call it MDS0. Let's give it some relevant description. I can choose standalone, HA. What I want today is HeatWave, because if I know how to do with HeatWave, I will know how to do with standalone and high availability. I need a user admin name, some very secure password. Let me configure the network. This one in the private network. I don't mind about the ID and the fault domain. The shape, it's okay. The storage is more than enough for my data. Let's configure the backup plan, the default one. And some relevant information. This one could be interesting if you have a very huge amount of data. It will speed up the creation of the instance. It's not the case in this demo, so I will skip that. And I want to create an instance, this instance based on the data already dumped. So I will use par source. So let's do that. My data are in the MySQL data bucket, and let's specify an expiration time for the par. Okay, 1 day is enough for me. And okay, now I have an URL, and I'm able to create my MySQL HeatWave instance. Okay, so this process will take approximately between 10 and 15 minutes. So to speed up the thing, I'm already created an MySQL HeatWave instance. So let's switch to MDS1. So first step, add HeatWave cluster. So to be clear, if I want to import data into a MySQL database service standalone or MySQL database service high availability, I'm already done all the steps, so I have no more work to do. Because it is a HeatWave cluster, I have some extra work, and this is what we are going to do now. So I have HeatWave, MySQL HeatWave database created. And what I want now is to enable the HeatWave cluster. So just click here, add HeatWave cluster. So HeatWave cluster, HeatWave is a cluster in memory cluster, distributed cluster, and I need to specify a number of nodes. So this number of nodes will depend of the database data size of the data and of the size of the data I want to put in the cluster. And so I can use the estimate node count. So let's try that, generate estimate. So generate estimate, it's a function that will analyze the data already inside the MySQL database service, the DB system, and give me all the relevant information. So yeah, I should have show you that. So let's connect to this MySQL instance, MySQL SH admin up. What is okay? I'll do that. Don't need that anymore. I need the IP address. Okay, MDS1 and this one. Up. Okay, let's switch to SQL mode and so schemas. So as expected, I have employees and TPCH. So in the MySQL side, these data are here, and obviously show tables in, for example, TPCH. I have some tables, etc. So this function is analyze the data. So employees, TPCH, and I can, from that, I can choose what data I want to put inside the cluster. It's not mandatory to put all the MySQL data inside the HeatWave cluster. I can put everything, obviously, if I want, but I can choose what I want to put. So let's say I don't want to put employee, but I want to put all the tables from TPCH. Obviously, I can choose what table I want, but let's say I want all the TPCH tables. Okay, so I will do that. I will need this command. Let's copy that. After, we'll use this store procedure to load the data, but it's a step after. And based on this, that I have almost 1 gigabyte of data, and it told me that I need only 2 node count. The minimum is 2 node actually. So let's apply this node count and let's add the HeatWave cluster. Okay, so this step is about 10 minutes, something like that, and the cluster is created. Okay. So for example, I can switch. I can check here. Okay, so the cluster is not yet created. It's in the process of creation. Off so far, and no nodes are created yet. Okay, so 10 minutes. I will not wait, and for this part, let's switch to my third cluster, MDS2. So MDS2 is a HeatWave cluster, and HeatWave is already enabled. So 10.01.40. Let's see how it goes here. Disconnect. Up. Let's switch to SQL. If I run this query, okay, so the cluster is already up. If I run this query, it's a 2-node cluster. The cluster is up. So far the cluster is created, but my data from the TPCH schema are not yet in the cluster. For example, I have a test query, this one, and if I run it, oh, sorry, let me choose the right schema. If I run this query, it will take some time because this query is running on the MySQL database side and not on the cluster. Okay, so what I need is to offload the data, to take the TPCH data and put them inside the cluster. So remember, we had the store procedure to run. Let's run this store procedure, sys HeatWave load. Like I said in this demo, I want only the TPCH data from the TPCH schema. So let's run that. So it's because there is not a lot of data, so it will be quite quick. And this store procedure will analyze the data, will offload the data, will give me some more information. Okay, so it was quite quick. Let's have a quick look on what I've done. So this is a feature we call auto parallel load. Okay, he analyzes the data, 8 tables, 61 columns, etc. Told me that it will take approximately 10 seconds to load all the data. Actually loading the data in parallel. And yeah, it takes a little bit more time than it was estimated, but 30 seconds was quite quick. So now, if I run again, so obviously it's still activated. The cluster number is still 2, but now what has changed is the rapid load progress, 100%. All the table I wanted to load into the cluster are loaded, right? So sounds good. Let's run the query, this one. Okay. On the MySQL side, this query time was about 3 seconds. And now it's using HeatWave and is under the second. So, and if I can do an expand on that, for example, tell me some interesting information using secondary engine rapid. That means that we are using the HeatWave cluster. Okay, so that's it for me. We imported data on the MySQL database system, and for the HeatWave cluster, we offloaded this data into the cluster. In the slide, I gave you more information, more context information. That would be interesting. And yeah, to conclude, I just wanted to tell you guys that we have the next English session is how to replicate MySQL HeatWave to a different region, 13th of May. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.